However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to the planet and beyond. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Joining me tonight to discuss the alien resistance you may not have heard of is Mark B. Mark B. We do not share his last name. He is remaining anonymous tonight, and he is a representative of the alien resistant group. We will discuss that and more with Mark in just a little bit. As a reminder, in the last 30 minutes tonight, you can call in and ask Mark your questions regarding this fascinating topic: alien intervention, abduction, and other close encounter experiences. And that call-in line is 85-KGRA Live or 855-472-5483 for the Paranormal Radio app hotlines. And one more time, 855-472-5483. That is your chance to sound off, share your experience if it relates to tonight's subject, and ask Mark questions that'll help all of us understand this very strange and often scary phenomena. And that's a major part of what Mark wants to talk to us about tonight, is not the good, willing messengers of love and light, but of something very, very different. All right. You can follow me on Twitter at paranormal_now or on Instagram at paranormalnow for weekly show updates. And, okay, hold on to your britches again. So, Paranormal Now is once again changing our time slot. I think we're holding a new record. Four time slot changes within 2 years on KGRA. But as you all know, KGRA is growing very fast. We're adding a number of high-quality shows, and there's a lot of restructuring going on, including the new website. And that address is kgradb.com. If you go to the old address, it'll direct you to the new site. But, there's an effort here from KGRA, Eric Brager, the efforts of Bill Skywatcher as well, to sort of rebrand, refresh KGRA and expand its base. And I think they're doing a great job so far. So that means they're going to be shifting the schedule of some shows around. And I am a willing participant in that restructuring and scheduling. So starting in 2021, Paranormal Now will be every Sunday night, 8 to 10 p.m. So no longer Saturdays. We're going to move. The first date will be the 10th of January in 2021, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 5 p.m. Pacific Time. So I know we're all over the place the past couple of years, but I promise you we'll be able to settle into this time slot for a little while. And it'll be cool. I'll be adjacent to Tracy Austin, which is another great show. So that's a bonus. All right, so stay tuned tonight. We're going to have Mark on in just a little bit. As a friendly reminder, please subscribe to The Telepath. If you go to the KGRA DB website, click on The Telepath to get the best in paranormal news. You can join our newsletter, and we keep you up to date on the latest and greatest in ufology, paranormal, cryptozoology, metaphysics, and science. And as many of you know, once again, SpaceX had another launch. And Andy, if you're listening, thank you for sending me that link. I do appreciate that. Yes, it exploded upon landing, but from an engineering standpoint, it was a success. And it seems that so far, SpaceX is on target to their unmanned mission to Mars. That's so cool. It's actually in reach. Now, granted, even if they don't get to Mars or don't launch spaceship in 2024, okay, so a couple of years later, if there are delays, but this is it. We're on track. The human race is going to Mars. Now, will the those at SpaceX be open to admitting if they do discover ancient ruins? To be honest with you, I think so. I think so. Because as we're all familiar with past comments made by Elon Musk, he is quite open to the idea that, one, we're being visited, and two, extraterrestrials have been here for quite some time. So I am sure that, yes, there will be factions, there will be those who will intervene and try to prevent him from sharing any discoveries. But I have to be honest, Elon Musk, he beats to his own drum, and I don't think he's gonna go along with that. If he finds ruins of an alien civilization, we're gonna find out about it, or at least I so believe, or so I #want to believe. All right, and in regard to all this, because what if we discover aliens have in fact been living on Mars, or had lived on Mars, or maybe had ruins that they had constructed here on Earth in the long past? Does that relate to what our guest Mark tonight is going to talk about? We'll ask Mark in just a moment. Mark B claims that ET visitation and contact is not a benevolent one. Mark is not necessarily. Mark is a member and representative of the Alien Resistance Group, and he joins us to make his case. Alleged abductees and experiencers often come back from their experiences with completely different sentiments. The mission of the Alien Resistance Group, ARG, is to act as a hub of activity with a central focus on resisting the extraterrestrial alien intervention in our world. We advocate clear boundaries, they say, towards contact with alien races to ensure that we only engage in ethical, open, consensual relationships. And that's going to be an important part of our conversation tonight, because it's not just black and white, is it? Is there just one race and they're bad? Or are there many more for us to discover? Mark, welcome to Paranormal Now.
Oh, thank you for that introduction, Alan, and thank you for having me as a guest tonight.
Absolutely, thank you. And if I get anything wrong in regard to the resistance group, please let us know, because any sort of activism group, there's more than just an awareness. There's a sense of urgency, and so to get your story straight is important to you, obviously. So as we go along, please feel free to correct anything that I may misunderstand.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Mark, before we talk too much about the group itself, what about you? Let's say, why can't you share who you are? And did you personally have an experience of some sort that led you to this place?
Well, I wanted to remain anonymous so I could make your show more entertaining. No, just joking. Because we are a resistance group, mm-hmm. We are resisting a force that we must respect, that we must take heed of. And this force, of course, is the extraterrestrial alien intervention into our world. And you briefly mentioned it, that there are actual several groups of collectives, alien collectives, mm-hmm. and each one of these collectives comprises several races of extraterrestrial alien beings. And each of these collectives are competing for the allegiance and for the control of this planet. So when we resist, we're up against some very powerful forces, and mm-hmm. I'm only taking the most rudimentary precautions here in order to protect my identity and my life.
You feel threatened?
I don't presently feel threatened, but I just feel like it's a prudent precaution.
I see. But why would you feel that way?
Because thousands, if not millions, of people have been taken against their will by extraterrestrial aliens. This is a serious matter. Many people are taken every year and are never returned and are killed by extraterrestrial aliens. Many people have been abused by extraterrestrial aliens, have been interfered with in their daily lives. So it's a serious matter, unfortunately.
Has this occurred to anyone close to you in your life?
This has occurred to people that I have known. Yes, it has. And you asked earlier about my own personal experience. I have not had I do not have awareness of a very serious intervention into my life or serious abduction, but I certainly have experienced interference at night and into my consciousness. I have experienced that.
What is that experience?
I prefer not to talk about it.
Okay.
And then, we have a film coming out in 1 week detailing Rachel's alien abduction experience.
Mm-hmm.
She has been abducted regularly throughout her life since the age of 3. And when I say regularly, I mean it's on a monthly basis at least.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
All right. So everyone who's listening, I'm going to put the link to the Alien Resistance group in the comment section on YouTube, Facebook, and elsewhere. And that way you can later on check out the trailer highlighting Rachel. And I was speaking to Mark earlier, and I was saying that when I watch any of these videos, like for instance, James Fox's The Phenomena recently, when I'm watching the eyewitnesses, the experiencers, I'm looking to see, is there a tell? Are they lying? Are they fabricating this? Are they having some sort of psychological breakdown of some sort, a schism, a reality that their mind is generating for them, right? So, how can I know all that? I don't know. But I do look to see, do I think they are telling the truth? Now, from what I can tell, Mark, when I watch this video with Rachel, she seems quite sincere. And why do you believe her?
It's exactly what you said. She's an extremely credible witness, experiencer, considering the long years of trauma and abuse that she has endured. To be able to speak so clearly and cogently about her experience is really quite impressive. And it's like anyone. You have a gut feeling as to whether someone is lying or is mentally deranged, and Rachel certainly does not come off that way at all. And the full film, which will come out in a week, it goes into much greater detail about her experiences. And for everyone who is concerned about this phenomenon and is interested in life beyond our planet, I think it's a fascinating film.
Okay, so you said you couldn't speak about your personal experience. Is that because it was traumatic?
Frankly, it's just not that dramatic. It's nothing compared to some other of these stories that you see in a film like Phenomenon or in Rachel's abduction experience. So, yeah.
Okay, and so what does Rachel think about this phenomena?
Oh, it's criminal. It's abuse. It's not right. These beings have no right to come to our planet, to come into our home, to take people against their will, to implant people, to rape people, to manipulate their reproductive organs, to implant them with alien fetuses, and then to take those fetuses out before full term. This is criminal.
Well, when we think of the word rape, I think society is becoming much more sophisticated in understanding what that means, and that it's not necessarily the worst thing that you can visualize as physical assault, right? And so, what is considered rape in this case? How are aliens, extraterrestrials, presumably biologically similar but different, raping humans?
I think rape, my definition is non-consensual sex.
And how does one have sex itself? How are these aliens making this happen?
I don't know, Alan. This is just part of Rachel's testimony.
I see. Okay. Yeah, because I've spoken to Geraldine Orozco, who's been on the show before, And the way she explained what happens is that there is I forget the term that exactly that she used, but they essentially project an image of what your subconscious mind finds as beautiful and attractive human, and that they sort of, in a sense, try to seduce you into having sex and seeing something there that's not actually there.
Yeah.
And that's a form of mind control as well. Yeah. So even if, and this is my understanding, is that even if to some degree you're less resistant, it's still rape nonetheless. And I think that most human beings would agree that next to murder, rape is equal, It's
pretty terrible.
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
It's horrific because it's a lifelong, it's a life sentence of trauma.
Yes.
And abuse. And no matter how hard you work at it, and, it's always going to be there. I mean, I have experience with addiction and recovery, and I know there's always going to be that thing there, no matter how well you can evolve, right? And how much peace and contentment you can find. It's always there.
Yeah, the scar is always there.
The scar is always there. It's like Frodo Baggins in Lord of the Rings, right? I mean, the ring wraith, stabs him with the sword, and despite all his efforts, it's always going to be there.
Yes.
And he moves on to the undying lands, but it's still going to be there with him no matter what. And I think that's quite profound. So, what happens to someone like Rachel after they've had this experience or experiences? What are they going through?
That's a great question. And I know she has gone through a tremendous amount of therapy, healing, been in support groups for other abductees. And I know she's received a lot of strength by being with other abductees, because this subject, of course, is taboo and you're seen as crazy. So being able to talk with other people who have shared this experience, I think, is incredibly healing and life-affirming for Rachel. She's also, of course, had great support, I think, from some of her friends, and she has a partner now as well, which has been fantastic. And I think she's also found a tremendous amount of support from her spiritual practice. Finding support from a higher power and from spiritual teachers or spiritual guides that are with us all.
What is that like? For instance, anyone who's been through a traumatic experience, or different recovery groups for different types of people. And my experience is that most of those groups use, terms like higher power, but it's not cornered into one specific religious system. What about you all at Alien Resistance Group? Where are you in regard to that?
Yeah, so most of us are actually practicing something called the Steps to Knowledge. It's a meditation course book that you study for 365 days a year. And it's designed for people who feel a connection to the greater life beyond Earth, in order to prepare us for this inevitable contact, which is the greatest threshold that any planet will ever go through. It's the greatest challenge that any species goes through in the galaxy, which is breaking out of its limited world awareness and making contact with intelligent life beyond its solar system. So, we do focus upon connecting to the divine knowledge within each of us in order to see and to know what the truth is regarding these deceptions that the extraterrestrials do try to use against us. Like you said, the screen, the images that they do project to gain our trust or to make them look attractive. And Rachel talks about this in the film. So we have to have a connection to, this deeper knowing in order to be able to tell our friends from our enemies. And if we are just naive beings on this planet, which we naturally are because we have no contact,
Mm-hmm.
very little contact with anyone outside of our world, how else are we going to know our friends from our enemies? And so we have this internal guidance system that is placed in us from the higher power, from the divine, you want to call it God. It's the same in all the religions. All the religions talk about it. It's this deeper ability to know.
Well, Bim Jim in the comment section says, we are the lab rats, but in a good way. Aliens have different concepts of right and wrong. So and that kind of contradicts, I think, what you're saying, because you're saying that these aliens do know right from wrong, right? And there are perhaps other extraterrestrial races that understand right from wrong and do right. So is it possible that another species just doesn't have the same sense of morality that we have, or ethics?
Certainly. And one of the mistakes that we make as a species is we project our own values and ethics out there into this greater community of life. And of course, the universe is not a human universe. So we have to be very careful not to place our own value judgments upon these extraterrestrial beings. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'd be happy to talk about some of the values and why the extraterrestrials are here. Many people like to look at the visitors as either angels, here to uplift us, take us to ascension, yep. Or they see them as demons, completely evil. So we have this common dichotomy in the human viewpoint of extraterrestrial aliens. However, there's a set of briefings from the Allies of Humanity, and they're actually writings from a group of extraterrestrials who are trying to teach us about some of these value systems, some of these perspectives of extraterrestrial aliens. And the aliens that are here, they're not angels, they're not devils, they're not good or they're not bad. They're simply here because they want what we have. They need what we have. Mm-hmm. They consider this planet extremely valuable. The biological resources are very rare in the galaxy. The development of a natural evolution on this planet is extremely unusual. So the animals, the plants, all the life forms here are extremely valuable out there in the universe. And they feel like we are destroying this place. We are laying waste to this Garden of Eden. And in a way, they feel like they are saving this planet from us. Of course, they want this planet for themselves. So in a way, they even feel justified coming here and interfering and trying to take over.
Well, doesn't it seem to fly in the face of itself that they would have a sort of empathy, right, for nature and for creation, a beautiful place like Earth, and yet not have empathy for us? We are the byproducts. We are Earth. We are of this planet.
But they feel like we are not appreciating the planet. We are not preserving the planet, particularly since World War II, when nuclear weapons came into use. They saw clearly our ability to absolutely wipe out life on this planet for millennia. And with our rapid industrialization and our consumer society, we're also laying waste to the natural resources, the biodiversity on this planet.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm just speaking from their perspective. I think everyone understands that we are not the best stewards that we can be of this planet. Mm-hmm. However, we are the rightful stewards of this planet. We are the owners of this planet. We are born here. Everyone else is aliens. And we may not be doing the best job, and we can improve and we should improve, but this is not for aliens to dictate how we manage our affairs.
Of course, our mindset is very different, right? I mean, if you're an intergalactic alien, then maybe you think in terms of, well, this land is our land, this planet is our planet, this solar system is our solar system, this galaxy is our galaxy, right? I mean, you can kind of extrapolate it out. So maybe they have a mindset like, hey, this is a shared universe, and if you don't do your part, you got to go.
Well, there are actually some rules in the galaxy, and one of the rules is that this solar system is ours. We are the only intelligent life forms in this solar system. So this solar system is ours to do, or is to manage as we please. Outside of this solar system, we live in actually a very densely populated part of the galaxy with very active trade routes. And
well, you know what, Mark? Let's hold it there. We're right up to the first break.
Sure.
It's very interesting, trade routes, and also these rules. What are they? I'd like to talk to you more about that when we get back on the other side. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. We'll see you all on the flip side.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Not try to capture how I feel and tell you the whole truth, but there's so much to be said, so I just leave you small clues. But now I'm burying my soul, and my soul loves you. Tell me nice things. Tell me nice things. Tell me nice things.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host on KGRA Radio Live. And yes, please check out the new website, kgradb.com. And you can get the latest in the archives, which we are continuing to build. So all the shows on KGRA, current and past, those archives will be uploaded, and there are many that are available now, and there are so many new shows as well. So check out the schedule. I'm sure that you will appreciate all the work that Eric Brager has done. If you like the music coming out of the break, that's Septembrio. If you want to find out more about them, go to Septembrio, spelled with a Y.com. And of course, as always, in the last half an hour tonight, we'll open up the phone lines. The Paranormal Radio app line is 855-472-5483 or 85-KGRA Live. Give us a call, tell us what you think, and we'd love to hear your questions so that we can better understand this phenomena that we're speaking of tonight. So, Mark, we can talk a little bit more about the trade routes and the rules. But before we get to that, I do have another question in regard to our conversation, and that is, did the aliens plant us here? Is this panspermia? Is that where we came from? And if so, do they have ownership over us?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a question, or that's a theory that's been placed out there for a long time, a theme of a lot of movies. Mm-hmm. And there might even be some truth to it. But that doesn't mean that any aliens from the past are our parents or our progenitors, or they have really any claim to our lives now. What happened 5,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago is really irrelevant, because we are, like I said before, we're the rightful owners and stewards of this planet right now.
You're saying that in terms of if it were panspermia.
And what do you mean by panspermia exactly?
Meaning that nature itself spread DNA or RNA, right?
Okay.
And that's how life began. So then we're all kind of the same species, if we're interconnected in that sense.
Oh.
And then, of course, there's the actual progenitor, meaning they created this. So are you saying that if they created us and put us here, that we're still the rightful stewards of the planet?
Yeah, in both cases, we still are. They might have seeded us. They might have, like I just watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, a couple of nights ago, and maybe we came from apes, and then aliens came here and mixed their DNA. I mean, that's possible. I really don't know, but it just doesn't change the fact that we are still like I said, the rightful owners and stewards of the planet right now.
Well, that seems like an argument that should be had out in the open, don't you think? I mean,
I mean, people can say they can give away their sovereignty, but I don't give away my sovereignty to extraterrestrial aliens.
Right. Very, very good point. Even if you're living in a country, right? I mean,
exactly.
There's still but there's an ongoing negotiation. I mean, that's what a democracy is. we're collectively making decisions and sacrifices to benefit the whole. And that's always going to be imperfect. And it seems like these extraterrestrials should give us the same benefit, right? Of having that discussion. Okay, what can we agree upon? And why don't they? Instead of interfering with us conspicuously,
Right.
Why
in the cover of night are they coming and doing these things?
Correct.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a good question. And again, this comes from the briefings from our allies, the Allies of Humanity briefings. And they say that, first of all, the aliens have a problem, is that there's no one to negotiate with here on planet Earth. There's no ambassador from planet Earth to go talk to. Like you would say, okay, I have a problem in France. Okay, I go talk to the ambassador of France and we need to negotiate this. We're not unified as a planet. We don't act as a single voice. We're still a bunch of competing countries, competing races, competing ethnicities, struggling over the same basic resources. We have yet to unite as a planet because we don't recognize our place in the universe yet. We don't recognize where we are in our collective evolution as a planet.
Okay.
So there's no single unified voice. The second thing is that aliens recognize that we're generally warlike and very aggressive. And
True. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think we all recognize from our history, particularly the 20th century, that, I mean, to an outsider, we're pretty threatening. And while we do have great attributes as a spiritual people, as a hardworking people, as a loving people, and we have a lot to give to the rest of the universe, they feel like we would bring some of these warlike tendencies into a very stable, unwarlike environment, which is what it's like outside of our solar system.
Okay. How do you feel if we play a little bit of the trailer so that people can get a sense of what we're talking about tonight?
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's do that. We're just going to show a little clip here for everybody.
No sound.
No sound?
No sound.
Okay, well, forget about that, everyone. I apologize. That would be a technical issue on my end. All right, well, for those who are watching, you could see Rachel there. Now, does Rachel offer theories of her own, or is she really just speaking in terms from just a personal place?
Oh, theories about what?
About what these aliens are doing, why they're here, what they're, things we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, she definitely does have her own perspective, informed by her own personal experiences. So her testimony, I think, is very valuable for that reason.
Okay. So what are these trade routes that you speak of?
Right. Like, I've never been on these trade routes. I've never been off the planet, so I don't. But again, this is from the.
You have no iPhone shots, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I would love to get a selfie out there with the trade route. But this is from the Allies of Humanity briefings, and they say that we're in a very active part of the galaxy where there's a lot of trading going on. It's a very well-developed part of the galaxy, and these are very advanced technological civilizations. And technological civilizations, unfortunately, all of them outstrip their natural resources eventually, and so they then must go out and find other resources to colonize planets, and then also to do extensive trading with their neighbors in order to get what they need. So that's the trade route scenario, from what I understand.
Now, are there any conflicts along the trade route itself?
Yep, no, because these trade routes are so important that war is extremely discouraged, because all these planets, they need these resources, and these planets have learned that war is time-consuming, it's costly, it destroys more resources. So conflict is kept to a great minimum. And not only that, unlike this planet, technology is generally very evenly distributed out there in the greater community. Planets can acquire technology either through spying or through actual purchasing of technology. So it's not like on this planet where you have a handful of countries who dominate the rest because of nuclear weapons, and they are able to blackmail people, essentially. Out there in the greater community, everyone has essentially equal technological weapons. So then the great battle is no longer about physical domination and about pure brute strength of might makes right. It's a battle of influence.
Why is the Earth so precious to them? I mean, I could assume that there are many habitable and beautiful planets out there in abundance, assuming that there are multiple races of sentient beings. I mean, statistically, the odds are there are, millions of planets like this. So why bother us? Why invest time and energy into Earth, especially a planet that will be here for billions of years, and humans very well may evolve in the next 500, 1,000, 5,000 years to the point where, we stop abuse and we no longer are a warring planet. Why not give us a shot?
Because it's just not true, Alan. This planet is quite rare. There are not millions of Earth-like planets out there that have evolved naturally over millennia to produce an incredible diversity of life here. Okay. And any of the ones that have developed like Earth, they've long ago been colonized and taken over. So we're in a rather rare position. And of course, we don't understand this because this is our home. We think every place is like this, right? It's like if you grow up in a mansion, you think everyone lives in a mansion. Or if you grow up in a shanty, you think everyone grows up in a shanty. But we don't have this perspective to really understand what a rare gem we live on, what a precious place this is.
So then where did these aliens evolve? I mean, were they not, biologically rich planets?
Well, from what we understand is that many of these societies are very rigid and technologically oriented, and they weren't blessed with the abundance that we waste every day. Mm-hmm. And they've had to evolve in a much different way. So, I mean, we don't have a lot of knowledge of what it is, but we're simply told that we don't appreciate what we have, and we assume that there are a lot of other Earths out there, and it's just not the case.
All right, for everyone who's joining in, I'm speaking with Mark B. from the Alien Resistance Group. If you want to find out more about them, you can go to the Alien Resistance Group page, and the trailer, which I was attempting to play, is there, and you can find out more about what Mark and I are discussing tonight, and that's alienresistance.group. Mark, I'm going to give this a go one more time and see if I can get this to play. Ready?
Fingers crossed.
Nope. Okay.
No.
We're gonna give up on this. All right. So, what are the rules, Mark? what rules are aliens giving us?
Well, they're not giving us. They really want us to be ignorant, and they want to keep us unaware of these general rules out there in the universe. They want to keep us unaware of what life is really like out there. One of the rules is the rule of non-interference, actually. And they just can't come in here with guns blazing and take us over. That's not allowed. Like I said earlier, war is not allowed. It's extremely discouraged out there. So the only way that aliens can come in here and take over, which is their intent, is if it seems like the native peoples, mm-hmm. that's us, by the way, we're the native peoples. Mm-hmm. If the native peoples seem to want intervention, if we seem to want aliens to come in here and make some deal with them. And so that's why we are experiencing so much confusion right now about, are aliens good, are aliens bad, abduction's good, abduction's bad. We're confused, and because we're being given so many different messages from different channels, different abductees, mm-hmm. different books. I mean, we're lost. We're like children being dumped into downtown New York City, and there are all these different people, there are all these different experiences. We're totally at a loss here.
What's wrong with downtown New York City?
Nothing, but you better know, where the subway station is, know where your local policeman is in a hurry,
Yeah, you can live here for 17 years and still get lost. But again, to me that seems like there's a contradiction there. It seems like there's a compassion if you're an anti-warring civilization, and yet you come here and you assault us. So besides the rape that we spoke of, What's the artificial insemination? What reports do we get? What is that like?
Rachel speaks extensively on this subject, unfortunately for Rachel.
Okay.
And she has been a subject of an alien-human hybridization program for all her adult life. And the purpose is for the aliens to create a hybrid race of beings who are able to physically endure the challenges of living on this planet, because aliens are not evolved to handle the physical stress and to be able to resist the microorganisms that we daily deal with. It was a part of our immune system.
Okay. Yeah.
So they need to have this human DNA, this human immune system, this human vigor, but they want to have these beings be loyal to their alien agenda. And so these hybrid beings will look like us, they'll sound like us, but inherently they will be loyal to an alien off-world agenda.
And so how many children do each of these people have?
Yeah. So Rachel testifies that she knows of 3 of her own alien hybrid children, and that's in the film. How many are there actually in the world? Now, the alien hybrid program has been researched quite extensively by Dr. Jacobs, professor at Temple University in Philadelphia. He has interviewed hundreds of people who are in contact with this hybridization program.
All right. And so Rachel, she offers her story like so many others. Does she have any, markings or anything of that sort?
Yes.
When she comes back?
Yes, she has markings. She also has evidence of implants in her arm and her head, bruisings, things like this.
Okay. And so is there a way to get that tested at all, and to verify something foreign happened to them?
She says she wants to have the implants removed. The bruising, the scratches, I don't think there's any way to prove anything there. So, yeah. So,
okay. So she can't physically, present something to say, this is clearly not of human origin.
It's not in the film, no.
Okay. And that's the hard thing a lot of people have, right? Is with this topic in particular. And that's why a lot of ufologists just won't even touch abductee cases, because it's mostly a shared story. And so, I mentioned to you earlier, it's like, how do we know when someone's fabricating a story or not? Have you had experiences where someone has said to you, or, your group, hey, Mark, this is an experience I had, and maybe some bells went off and you thought, oh, I don't know about this person?
Absolutely.
And what do you look for? Or is it intuitive?
I think it's intuitive, and it's what Senator Helms from North Carolina once said about pornography, right? He knows it when he sees it. I think you feel it, and you're right. From a purely materialistic scientific perspective, there's not a ton of evidence out there. These aliens have vastly superior technology to us, so they're able to hide their tracks pretty easily compared to our rudimentary technology. For instance, I sent a infrared camera to Rachel to install in her bedroom in a really crude effort to try to get some evidence of these these nighttime abductions, which seem to happen at least once a month. And of course, these cameras get disabled in the middle of the night mysteriously. And I think for the aliens, this must be like child's play to them, us trying to get video footage.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, it's like the nuclear sites where things just go awry with their systems, shut down, restart, and then are back to normal. Clearly, someone has extraordinarily advanced technology in order to do that, and that goes back decades. And in fact, actually, the more complicated our technology gets, I would assume it's actually easier for them to do that rather than systems that are based on more rudimentary hardware. Just like a hacker, right? If you don't have a computer, you can't get into someone's home. But if you're a hacker, you can get in, you can look through their camera. So, yeah, that's very creepy. People who are looking for Bigfoot and other cryptids, try the same approach, and yet have had success with that. Have you had any success with your own endeavors like this to get proof?
No, have not. And I know I'm not the first, so I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, and I know Dr. Roger Lear was had collected implants, alleged implants from abductees, and these were sometimes metals that did not seem to be manufactured here on Earth, but those were often inconclusive. So what do you believe in? How do you feel about those implant stories and that evidence?
I believe it myself. It makes a lot of sense. The aliens look at us like the way we look at cattle. And don't we do the same thing with cows? We plant tracking devices on them, or other animals that we want to track in our national parks. We have tracking devices in them. That's the way the aliens really look at us. They look at us sort of as crude, beings, but they need us. They don't want to kill us. They want to use us and, control our perceptions of them so that we are then a compliant workforce for them. So it makes sense they would do this.
But why kill us?
They don't want to kill us. They don't really want to kill us. They want to use us. They want to employ us. But some people do perish in the process.
If they're so advanced, couldn't they just do it now, make their move, take things over?
Well, the hybridization program, it takes generations for them to get enough representatives in the halls of power and government positions that are able to influence people high up in religion and in areas of commerce. So this is a long-term covert colonization program, and they're very patient, unlike us.
Yeah.
And not only that, apparently they have used this same playbook on other planets. And so they're very confident, even arrogant about, their success here.
How in court, eyewitness accounts can only go so far, but they are admissible, right, as evidence, and can lead one to investigate. If someone goes to the police station and says, "Hey, I saw something," and someone else said, "I saw the same thing," that there's enough faith in most humans that they're telling the truth most of the time. And I suppose we have to apply that same approach to this phenomena. Elon Musk, he's made some very strange comments alluding to his belief that extraterrestrials are here or have been here. Specifically, his comment about aliens assisting or building the pyramids, right? So what if we get to Mars and we find structures there? Would that force these beings to open up about their presence?
That's a great question. I really don't know. Clearly, their interest is not in Mars. They're more interested in this planet. So I'm really concerned about, exposing them of what they're doing on this planet and saying, no, you can't be doing what you're doing here. You're coming like a thief in the night into our planet. If you've been on Mars in the past, that's not my primary concern right now. Although I know Elon Musk considers Mars our future, I'm not ready to give up on this beautiful planet at all.
Well, we have to take things he says with a grain of salt too. I mean, he did want to nuke the poles to terraform the whole planet. So, I don't think that's a great idea, especially if we're sending people there first. So, I have a question from Neutron in chat on kgradb.com, and that question is: has Rachel tried multiple regression therapies to go through all the false layers of screensavers implanted on her to blur things on the abductions?
Yeah, that's a good question, Neutron. I know that she is in the process of going through this, and yes, but there's no conclusions yet. She's not ready to speak about this yet.
Yeah. Are we crazy to even entertain these ideas. I mean, there's a lot of us out there that do shows like this, have conversations with, people like yourself. I mean, is it easier to just ignore it and not even talk about it?
Well, if you want to live a very comfortable and blissful life, I think so.
Well, then forget it. Good night, everybody.
But, the people who are interested in this topic, I believe they're alive now for a reason. They were born into this time for a reason. And the reason was not to, pull up a lawn chair on the beach and, drink pina coladas all day and just enjoy their life. We are here, you and I, Alan, and the others listening to the show, we're here to participate in the greatest event, the most challenging threshold that any intelligent species will ever go through. And we're just beginning this right now, although maybe 70 years doesn't feel like a beginning. But this is what we're going through and what our children will go through and what our grandchildren will go through. So this is an extremely important event. And somehow, some way, we feel we are this is part of our life, part of our destiny, part of our mission in life.
Mm-hmm. Is this part of your mission in life?
I feel so.
When did you discover that? When did you get that sense that this is a mission for you?
I don't know about mission, but I think all of us, most of us at least, get a sense early on in life as a child that there's some fascination with the stars, fascination with other life. And for me, it happened at a planetarium, doing one of those night shows, looking up into the dark sky and
God, I love that.
Yeah, that stuff, and then and learning about SETI and all about the gold record that we sent out into space with Voyager 1 or 2, I forget, and then actually receiving messages back. This type of stuff, it stays with you. And why does it stay with us?
Yeah, if anybody ever gets a chance to come to New York and go to the planetarium there at the Natural History Museum,
great.
It's very transportive. I loved that. One of the more recent ones, and that was probably like a decade ago, was narrated by Whoopi Goldberg, and it was just absolutely beautiful. All right, so we're going to come back on the other side of this second and last break tonight. And Libertas, I know you're listening. We'll get to your question on the other side as well. This is a fascinating conversation. As always, we'll be right back with Mark, Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA. We'll see you on the other side.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host, and tonight with me is Mark B. of Alien Resistance Group. Taking us out of the break, as always, was Septembrio. That's Septembrio spelled with a Y.com if you want to find out more about them. And we also have a special treat, actually. So next week, Lizette Xavier, who also does bumper music for us, is joining me to share her new holiday song. And it's actually quite beautiful and quite moving. So she'll join us at the top of next week's show, and we'll play that video and song for everyone. And I think you'll really appreciate it. It was really, really quite moving and timely indeed. All right, Mark. So if there's one thing that you could say to everyone listening, the most important message tonight, what would that be?
Aliens go home. We need to say aliens go away. We're not ready for contact yet. And aliens that are here today are violating our sovereignty.
But how do you convince the greater public of that? Because you have to get enough people, right, to believe in such a thing in order to make that happen. Or the right people, the few people in the upper echelons of government, I suppose. But I would assume that they must be aware if this is going on.
Well, yeah, and but it doesn't really take such a huge percentage. It's been estimated it only takes 2 or 3% of the population to be aware and to resist. Most people are not active in anything, any kind of politics or social change movement. I think the American Revolution only had the active participation of maybe 10% of the colonists in order to overthrow, the greatest empire that the world had seen at that time, the British Empire. But any resistance movement, any kind of social change movement has to start somewhere. And the alien resistance group is simply putting a flag on the beach, which is dominated by the other side, which is aliens are all good. We want to be a part of the Galactic Federation. They're going to bring us peace. They're going to bring us free energy, yada, 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 yada. There's very little resistance out there. And, this is the beginning of it, I think.
And what's the timeline? What is the alien resistance group up against?
Yes, that's a sobering question, Alan. Unfortunately, it seems like we don't have a lot of time. It seems that about 30 years ago, we were told we don't have a lot of time. And so this is 30 years later. It doesn't look good right now. If we think 2020 was bad, I shudder to think what 2030 or 2040 will look like under greater alien influence.
And what do you mean under? What influence do they have right now?
Well, right now is that most people consider, invasions of our planet to be okay. Most people are not clear that abductions are a crime. People are complacent or even feel entertained and titillated by the idea of aliens coming here. And they have fanciful and hopeful notions that aliens are here to help us. We're being deceived at a massive, massive level. And we just simply need to take back our natural discernment to know right from wrong. If someone came into your house, Alan, in the middle of the night, unannounced and uninvited, how would you feel? Obviously, you wouldn't like it. And you would feel like this is a crime and this is an invader. And yet this is what's happening every day to people. This is happening on our planet right now. These aliens are here uninvited, coming into the dark of night. They're sneaking around. They're taking our people. They're taking our resources. And no one seems to care. No one seems to mind.
Well, I think there are a number of people that can go both ways in regard to movies in Hollywood, right? They love the alien invasion movies where we're fighting off the aliens, but then there's also movies like E.T. Are there not an E.T. type species out there?
It's not that they're not out there, because there are good aliens and there are bad aliens. The problem is that only the self-interested aliens are here on the planet. So our friends in the galaxy, and we do have friends, we have allies. They are in the galaxy. However, they have all retreated from the planet in order to make it unequivocally clear that the aliens that are here today are the quote-unquote bad ones that are here for their own self-interest, that are manipulating us to make us believe that they are our friends, and they're really not.
What influence are they actually having? Like in real world time, are there things you can point out to us that we can look to, that you can say, hey, that's them?
I don't think they have such clear fingerprints. I mean, the greatest fingerprints are the abductions, the taking of people. I think the allies of humanity also talk about how the powers in this world, the great countries in this world, are encouraged to go to war with each other. So it could be argued that America's foreign wars could have been encouraged by these aliens in order to divide us. And that's one of the goals of the intervention, is divide and conquer, to keep us at war with each other so that we don't recognize a common enemy beyond our borders. You might have remembered Ronald Reagan made this point in 1987 at the United Nations. He says, I think all of our differences would quickly disappear if we were to recognize a common adversary, aliens.
Right. Now, see, like you said earlier, though, human beings have a history of being a warring territorial species, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've been doing that to ourselves for millennia. I don't think aliens need to, but I suppose, that doesn't mean they can't do it, right? Further divide us, and because that's how you do it, right? Divide and conquer.
Yeah, that's what the Spaniards did when they came to South America. I mean, there was warring tribes of Incans and Mayans, and they were killing each other. Well, the Spaniards just helped perpetuate that. And the Spaniards clearly took over with other advantages, making the natives believe they were gods of some kind, and they also had superior technology.
Yeah. I have a question from chat on kgradb.com from Libertas, and that's, how do you suggest we resist? Do you think factions of world governments are complacent, or do you think there are factions resisting now?
Yeah, regarding the government, you might know that governments are very large organizations, and there's tons of people in there. And I do believe that there are factions within the government who are quite aware of the alien interference into our world, and they are resisting in their own small, quiet way. But you just can't say, that the entire government is for aliens or against aliens. I don't think that's realistic. How can we resist? We resist by becoming strong within ourselves, by connecting to this divine power. Because while conditions here on Earth are going to get more difficult here, technology dehumanizes us more, separates us more. Our allies tell us that our greatest strength is our spirituality, and our alien visitors do not value this spirituality. And it's clear, because they wouldn't be here if they were spiritual beings. They wouldn't be trying to steal this planet from us if they were spiritual beings. So our best defense, and in fact, it's the only way that we will persevere, because our allies had to do the same thing. They had to rely upon this divine inner knowing.
I have a question from Anonymous. How do you know that we have friends in the galaxy? How do you know that there are benevolent aliens?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, ultimately, it has to come down to your discernment. I mean, do you know this? So the allies of humanity are examples of these friends in the galaxy. They are a group of different races who came here to observe the intervention of these quote unquote bad aliens trying to influence us and divide and conquer us and take us over. And then they provided their reports to us, their briefings to us. And so these are the good aliens, if you want to call them that. And these briefings are free online, by the way, at alliesofhumanity.org.
Okay. Are there any secret agendas that we should be aware of as far as the resistance group?
We don't have any secret agenda. We're just, our mission statement is clear on the website. Or are you talking about a secret alien agenda?
No, agenda for the group itself. Because people have to ask and be mindful. And I don't mean to, certainly don't mean to insult any Scientologists that may be listening out there, but one does know that as you go up the scale of Scientology, they reveal more information to you, right? So is there anything like that layered into this group? Do you join the group? Is it trying to get you somewhere else to believe in something that you're not publicly sharing right now? Nope,
there's nothing. All the resources that are on the website, we vouch for them. For instance, the Steps to Knowledge meditation program, it's not required. The videos that we have up there of Carla Turner and Bud Hopkins, maybe these people are dead. So, but no, there's no other hidden agenda. It's simply for resistance, and we offer materials and awareness and resistance tools, and you can take them or not.
Can I just meditate and put out like an energy shield, as it were? Or can I wear a crystal or do something to keep these beings away from me? Or is that just like too woo-woo?
No, and Rachel actually talks about a couple of these methods. She talks about a invocation that she uses when she feels the presence of the visitors, and she repeats it in her mind over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that she talks about in the film is a visual image of a diamond, and she creates like a force field around her self-image, and that seems to protect her as well.
We have a question. How can I find out about Allies of Humanity?
Yeah, alliesofhumanity.org. There's a website, and there are 4 free books there online to read. So there's plenty of material. I recommend the first book, The First Briefing. It'll give you a lot to think about and a lot to consider.
Do you do anything, Mark, to keep yourself safe?
Yeah, well, I meditate, and I do the steps to knowledge, and I also protect myself at night before I go to bed.
I have an interesting question here, actually, from Earth Radio Ron. Do you think space travel is the answer to get away from the aliens?
I don't. I think that's how you get closer to the aliens.
Well, but I guess if we could leave this planet, if it's like, well, if they want it so bad, we'll go somewhere else. If our lives are endangered, like refugees.
Yeah, the problem is that our allies tell us that most of all the habitable planets have long ago been taken. There's really nowhere to go. This solar system is all we've got. There's no running away.
There's no running away.
There's no running away, no.
Okay, so Ufi asked this question, and I'm going to follow up on this. Did you say that there is a list or some document out there that explains to people techniques they can use to help keep these beings away from them? And does that, if that works for the individual, is there no way to apply these resistance techniques to keep them away completely?
Well, the simplest way that we keep them away completely from this planet is, and the Allies detail this quite clearly, they say there's 3 things we need to do to keep the aliens away. And the first is to unite as a planet, and we talked about that already. The second thing is to preserve our natural resources and to be good stewards of this planet. And then the third is to be discreet and not to be broadcasting all of our conflicts and all of our problems and all of our tendencies out into space. These are the 3 things that our allies on each of their home worlds have had to achieve in order to repel these other alien collectives, which we are now beginning to face.
But how do we not broadcast?
Well, we used to do over-the-air, radio broadcasts and television broadcasts and the internet and just generally as a species, in our culture, we're not very discreet people. We're talking about all of our feelings and all of our issues.
Well, at least we're talking about our feelings, whereas before, there were generations that you just didn't do that. So I guess there's a good and a bad, but
I think there's good processing of feelings in a safe, protected environment, but not in public. You wouldn't do that in public, right?
Oh, a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are groups like this, I suppose, right?
Yeah, and so that's part of the reason why I haven't put my visual identity out there, is a little bit of discretion. Right.
Now, do you get together, physically with other people who've had these shared experiences?
Yes, I do. I have a study group of people who study the steps to knowledge, which help us, have greater discernment and discretion in our daily lives.
So even if we're not using radio to broadcast, we have satellites that we've sent out there.
Exactly.
It's already kind of too late, don't you think?
Well, those Voyager, satellites that are beyond the solar system, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to understand that we're living in a neighborhood here, and just like you would, when you're living in your house in your neighborhood, you don't start, screaming at your spouse with the windows open and the doors open, at least if you want to be discreet. You want to keep your business private. You don't want your neighbors knowing about all the intimate details of your life. You want to keep these things private. You want to keep your weaknesses private, especially because it's just a competitive world out there. You don't want to, let your neighbors know about your financial condition. You don't broadcast your bank account, around the neighborhood. I mean, these are the types of things we have to be considered. It's a new perspective that we need to have. We're far from alone in the universe.
True, but we all agree that there are people stealing our information. We don't all agree that aliens are even visiting in the first place, let alone, interfering in our lives. So again, it goes back to that problem of enough people to make a change. And I think, Mark, in order for that to happen, I think there just has to be enough evidence. I mean, we could get more people, let's say, to come out and say, I had this experience. But I don't know if that's going to be enough for the public at large. I think they need more hard evidence.
Mm. Yeah, well, for the people who don't believe, in my experience, all the evidence in the world doesn't convince them. And just trying to provide more evidence, it just doesn't really work.
Right.
There is so much evidence out there, and you've been studying this for years. There's so much out there. If you don't want to see it, you don't have to see it.
Well, that's absolutely true, especially in regard to UAPs, UFOs visiting planet Earth. I think there's more than ample evidence. Now, some would argue what is proof and what isn't proof, but at a minimum, there's plenty of evidence to take it seriously. But again, it's that abduction experience that it's a whole nother level. I mean, we don't have top secret documents galore, or secretive investigative groups, or public groups like the new UAP task force investigating alien abductions. Right now, if that exists, if we could go to get FOIA documents that said, "Oh my God, Eisenhower was visiting aliens," and we had the document that said that such, then maybe we would believe that it happened. But there's a lot of circumstantial evidence there. Intriguing, but not enough. If we had evidence of documents that were released from the Army. That said, after Roswell, they had another investigation group to look into alien abductions or something like that. And we could look at that print, we could get that. Then I think that you would have a much easier time convincing.
You have more faith than I do, in Alan, in the rationality of people and, the scientific process and scientific evidence. I don't think that's really going to help. Although it certainly wouldn't hurt, but what it does is it puts a dependence upon the idea of disclosure, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if we just had disclosure, well, then everyone would understand, right? And we would all be in agreement that, aliens are here. But then what? We still have to ask the question, why are aliens here? And we have to have a sober, objective approach to that question.
Well, what do you think is the best objective evidence that aliens are visiting Earth?
I think there's a ton of photographs, a ton of video, personal accounts of real, sane people, abduction stories like Rachel's. I mean, there's just so much evidence.
Do you believe Roswell was an actual UFO crash?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. There's just so much circumstantial evidence, even if you don't believe the direct evidence.
But why would these aliens who are so advanced make mistakes?
It's not that they're making mistakes so much. It's just that they don't believe we can resist. They just are so confident.
So there's almost like a lax attitude in their approach.
The lax attitude, and also Rachel explains how they're very regimental, and it's like they have a playbook, and they have to follow the playbook, like instruction 1, instruction 2, instruction 3. And if things don't go according to plan, they're not creative. They can't adapt. They don't ad lib. That's how mistakes are made, because things don't go according to plan. And they're not really so worried because they've taken over other planets through this playbook in other ways. And they're coming here for what we have. And it's because we don't have a greater perspective of what life is like out there.
There are other victims out there, you're saying, races.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have any idea how many?
Unfortunately, the Allies tell us it's a common occurrence for planets like ours to be overtaken without force.
There's a comment from old dude in YouTube, and it says, implants seem to be one example of evidence. I have an implant in my forehead discovered in 84 by Loma Linda Medical Center. Old dude, if you're still listening, were you able to get that implant tested and verified that it was perhaps a foreign, non-earthly object? And again, Mark, that's what people want, right? That's what makes great headlines. Even when there are tongue-in-cheek headlines in the mainstream media regarding implants or a crashed UFO or whatever, it's when they can point to something physical, a picture, a video, that's what gets attention. Do you think this documentary will have an effect? Is that what you're hoping to get mainstream media's attention?
We're hoping to raise awareness, certainly. And we're also hoping to give courage to other abductees to speak out and to build a movement here. For at least from my perspective, the physical evidence is helpful, but because we're not facing a physical takeover, it's not the physical evidence that's so important, because we're under a takeover through influence and manipulation and ideas. So it's this awareness that needs to be front and center.
All right. And old dude said he was too scared and too young to get tested. What about yourself, Mark? Have you ever thought perhaps there might be some evidence in your own body of an experience that you've had? Or do you think that, well, that's question number one. Question number two is, can the alien resistance group itself, if you build up enough of a collective, could you fund your own testing of alleged materials?
That's a great question. Possibly. We're right now looking into building a network of hypno-regressionists to support abductees. And possibly, if there is demand for the removal and the analysis of implants, that could be also a future service. So thank you for that suggestion.
Who founded, and because you said this is more of like a collective, right?
Right.
Was there one person in particular that got this group started?
No.
People just started talking online? Is that how this evolved?
Well, we were studying Steps to Knowledge, and we had also read the Allies of Humanity briefings. So
okay.
We felt like this was the next step, because there hasn't been much of a resistance mounted. There have been a couple of groups out there, but so far most of the abduction coverage has been of an entertaining nature or a mysterious nature. And through the Allies briefings, there's the hunt is over, the chase is over. We really understand now what's going on. We don't have to wonder and keep researching anymore. It's time to resist.
Okay, we're going to open up the Paranormal Radio app lines in about 7 minutes. That number is 855-472-5483. So if you want to call in and ask Mark your question, that's 85-KGRA live. Mark, can you be any religion, have any spiritual belief system, to be a part of this group and to resist, as it were?
Yes, you can be of any religion, you can have any spiritual practice, and participate in the group. Okay.
Are you familiar with any practices that maybe other people in this group who come from different religions apply to help them cope with what they've experienced? Because I'd imagine as a collective, you would share this sort of, these applicable techniques.
Well, I think from what I understand and from my own experience, I think calling upon a higher power, no matter what you call the higher power, is effective. So a lot of people invoke the name of Jesus Christ because they feel Jesus Christ is their personal savior or is God. And I think that's effective. Whatever you consider a higher power, I think is what helps protect us.
Well, my friend Heidi Hollis speaks about that a lot, and she's come on quite the evolution from, not being religious to she does that same thing. She calls upon Jesus, but she is non-denominational. and her dealing with shadow people and other strange phenomena, it seems to work for her.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Now I'm not a religious person. I'm most certainly in the agnostic camp. So my conception of what a higher power, quote, higher power is what I refer to as universe with a capital U. But in that sense, I don't claim to know or describe what that is, right? It's more of an intuitive sense that there's something much bigger, interconnected, maybe a super consciousness that's there. We can all feel it no matter what religion we are, but we apply different names to it. So someone like myself, what can I do? Or, because I describe myself as a part-time atheist, what about atheists, right? What do they do?
Well, my personal belief is even if you're an atheist, you still have divine knowledge living within inside of you. And you can access this ability to know the truth.
But they don't believe in divine knowledge. You're applying that to them, but...
Well, you don't have to believe in it, and you can still have it. So it's just like you don't believe that you're actually wearing clothes, but you probably are. That's the way I look at it.
So if the atheist can't pray to an HP, then what? What do they do?
They don't have to pray. All they have to do is, connect inside. Listen, meditate. A practice in meditation will help you to connect with the mystery that lives within all of us. And you don't have to call that mystery, God or Jesus Christ or anything. But the mystery is, where did we come from? Why are we here? And where are we going? This is common to everyone who's alive.
What do you think the HP is, or the universe, whatever you want to call it? What is it? What is it made of?
What is it made of? You know what? I'm just a simple human being. I don't know.
Well, we didn't expect you to be a physics professor, but you must have some idea, right, of what your interpretation of that thing is.
I just find that it just doesn't serve me to, try to come up with a definition or an explanation for it. It's just something that you experience and you feel. And you don't necessarily have to understand it. In fact, I think trying to understand it separates you from it a little bit, because it's not mental. It's deeper than that.
Well, where are you in the Big Bang Theory? Is that do you follow science in that regard, or do you remain in the we just don't know anything yet?
I think the Big Bang makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not a physicist or an astrophysicist, but I'm a big fan of science. I think science is how we learn what we don't know, and I think we don't know an enormous amount. So I do applaud the scientific process. I think that's a fantastic thing.
Okay, well, we have our first caller, and we're going to bring on Jim from British Columbia. This is Alan. Welcome to Paranormal Now. How are you? Jim, can you hear us? Hey.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you, Jim.
Oh.
Welcome.
Oh, hi, yeah. I have a question for Mark, and I asked this question of Jimmy Church, and he thought it was a really good question. I said, Jimmy, why are we experiencers? Why is Chris Bledsoe an experiencer? Why are some people experiencers and some people not? I have two possible answers to that question. One is that maybe we have special abilities, or they just pick somebody out. They being whoever they are, I don't know. I don't even know who they are. But they have picked me out to have experiences. And then if you read or you listen to Chris Bledsoe's story, he's obviously an experiencer, Mm-hmm. So why are some people experiencers?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jim. Thank you. And I'm sure this is something that's really puzzled you over the years if you've had a number of different abduction experiences or experiences with extraterrestrials. The Allies of Humanity say that people are selected based upon a few characteristics, one of which is their sensitivity, their ability to connect mentally or psychically with the visitors. Another reason is your general good nature, generally cooperative people. And then lastly, third, people who are well spoken, like yourself, who are articulate, who will potentially be able to be spokespeople for the visitors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, I have some abilities that I've discovered over time, and now I've experimented with non-local consciousness, which I learned from the native people and other people, and I discovered that I can find another person like me by thinking at them. You know, like I did this experiment recently where I thought at a group of strangers whose backs were to me, and I thought I sent a powerful thought message to this group of people, and one person spun around and smiled and looked me right in the eye. And it was a younger woman who was quite tall, and she just spun right around and looked me right in the eye. Nobody else did anything like that, but she did that, right? And other people have found me that way. That is, they've sent a mental message to me, and then I've gone over to them. This is a stranger. I've gone over to a stranger and said, "Oh, hello. What are you doing here? What do you think about philosophy?" or something like that. Get them into a conversation. And
that's pretty direct. That's impressive.
Pardon me?
That's very direct to connect like that.
Yes, well, I work at a very empirical level, and I do that deliberately because I'm an engineer, and that's the way I think. I got to get the basics down first, right? I'm like Galileo, right? Like all Galileo did was he figured out motion, just distance divided by time. That's all. Very simple physics. It's the beginning of physics, and I do that with non-local consciousness. So I try very simple experiments. I also communicate with animals, and as the native people knew, they knew about that. And I met a native woman who was very good at that, and she could call up whole flocks of birds to fly above her in a big circle and all this stuff. And I may not be that good, but I can certainly communicate with wild animals. And I give talks about this to young people who are interested, and I give them exercises that they can try, and I suggest that they try wild animals, not pet animals, because you can see the change in behavior of a wild animal that you can't see in a pet. So I even give them different species of animals and that they can talk to or communicate with, and I do other experiments and very empirical stuff. And I have a few friends who can do this as well, and we've done some experiments in this. And I've only worked with 2 other people at a time usually, because I want to keep it real simple. I want to see clear evidence. And I realize that, you see, this is the problem. This is where you have to break with the scientific method, because you can't record this in any way. You can only observe it for yourself, and maybe one other person or 2 other people can make these observations, and that's it. That's as much as you can do. And I mean, I've tried to figure out scientific tests and so on, but I can't come up with one. So I just stay with the most empirical thing, and I've tried a few other things. And I've had experiences like I can see through time. I've done that a few times, and I've had my consciousness go into a bear. I became a bear. And I've had these experiences.
That makes me think a lot about this alien agenda as well. Thank you so much, Jim, for your question. And as you develop your skills and abilities, please keep us updated if you make any progress in that regard. I'd really like to hear from you in the future. Mark, it makes me think that we have abilities, right, that are perhaps latent, but we have not developed them. Is it possible that human beings can become mentally or spiritual, if you want to use that word, more empowered?
Absolutely.
And skills and abilities in order to protect ourselves, in order to guard our planet, and especially if we go way out in the universe, are there things we can use outside of just hard tech?
Absolutely, because hard tech out there in the universe there's no advantages out there. Everyone's got the same gun, if so to speak. So what the advantage is this power in the mental environment that you've described. It's exactly what people are seeking out there. They're seeking these advantages in the mental environment. And in fact, that's what the aliens are using against us right now, is their superior power in the mental environment.
All right, we're going to take our second caller tonight, and that is Ron from Minnesota. Welcome again to Paranormal Now.
Hey, Alan, and
Hey, Ron.
Mark, great show again.
Thanks, Ron.
Another blockbuster. You're right. You're talking right in my what do they say? Right in the
wheelhouse.
Yeah. Anyway, I've been working on actually in the last month, probably working on the meditation process. Would you say that the aliens communicate more with telepathy or mostly with telepathy?
I really don't know the process, but I have experienced thoughts come into my head, which later I realized were not my own. And that's a really dangerous realization if you ever have an experience like that, when you realize that your thoughts are not your own and they were put there from some other entity. And I don't know how they do that or what you want to call it telepathy, but that is a power that they have.
I mean, that's an absolute infraction of our free will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then what do you do with the ability with people that can do mind readers? Like say remote viewing and things like that, can do mind reading and things like that. Most of the time it's not with anyone's permission that they're doing this, except for somebody that maybe hires them to do the job. What do you think of something like that?
Well, actually, the Allies of Humanity talk about this. They talk about the importance of seers in this greater community of life, and that every planet has like an army of seers to try to look into other planets to try to get intelligence. And every planet also has their own team of defensive seers to keep out other seers. So this gives you a taste of the level of sophistication on the mental realm that's out there, and that we're just starting to scratch the surface on.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for a great show and all the information you've been sharing with us, and appreciate you at least talking about it. We need more people talking about this stuff. And I think that way we can get our stories out and we can maybe find some kind of truth out there, Thank you again, Alan. Great show. And thank you, Mark. And thank you, Bill, for taking the call.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
Ron.
Thank you so much, Ron. Appreciate it. Have a good night. All right. And our next caller is Libertas from Massachusetts. Welcome, Lib. How are you?
I'm doing great, Alan. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks.
Good. Mark, good evening. First, I want to commend you for bringing to the forefront certainly a possibility that the alien situation is one more of benevolence, excuse me. Having sat with a number of abductees and seen grown adults cry their eyes out about their abduction experience, it is not a good thing. I've always theorized that world governments are protecting fossil fuels, and that's the reason why they haven't formally disclosed. But the more research for a longer period of time I do, I certainly come to the realization that, the hypothesis that the malevolence factor has to come into play. Now, you never mentioned animal mutilations. And not only do they mutilate animals, they return them to the location of the mutilation.
Yes.
What can the purpose of that be other than to scare people? And the subject matter I refuse to research is human mutilations. There is evidence of it. It's so disgusting, I won't do it. But I know a number of people that were involved in an infamous abduction case in Maine. And one of the people were laying on an exam table, if we can call it that. And the Greys, as we call them, were doing the abduction, the examination. One leaned over to the gentleman and right in his face said to look, there are many dimensions. Now, this same gentleman is friends with John Mack, And he was at a Mac symposium years ago. And there were some people from the government there. And as a favor to John Mack, he asked this gentleman if he would meet with the officials from the government. And so he did, and he told me the government wasn't interested in the vehicles. They weren't interested in the beings. They were only interested in, if we can refer to it as, medical equipment. And that's pretty interesting when they don't care about the craft and beings. They only care about the devices they're using on the humans. But, Mark, I would recommend one thing to you, that you look into a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Brandenburg. And he's friends with Don Ecker, who does a program on KGRA. But he has said that we have discovered a particular type of isotope on Mars, and it only occurs during nuclear situations. So the theory is that Mars was nuked at one time.
Interesting.
So anyways, thanks for taking my call, Alan. And I'd like to thank you for putting this out, Mark. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Lib. I really appreciate the call. Yeah, Mark, what are these aliens? He mentioned grays. Is that what we're dealing with, or is there something else here?
Well, there's a whole variety of species of aliens, and so it gets quite confusing. It's not just grays. It's not just the tall blondes. It's not just reptilians. So it's quite a confusing melange for us to try to sort through. But I'd like to just answer the question about the cattle mutilation,
sure,
even the human mutilation. When I talked earlier about biological resources, this is really what's of value to the aliens. There's a market out there for plasma, for instance. These are the biological building blocks of life, which are very valuable. So sucking, the guts and all of the liquids out of a human or a cow.
Very scientific, Mark.
I'm no scientist. Sucking the guts out. There has to be a scientific term for that. So that would be the reason. But the other reason is apparently the aliens are fascinated how we have domesticated animals and we eat them, because they don't eat animals. They don't have animals to eat. So I think they're interested in learning how to have their own livestock and then have that as a food source for them, because apparently feeding people is difficult on other planets.
Okay. You said that there's multiple aliens, but the one that is doing the aggression, committing aggression against us, what do they look like? Because wouldn't that be a good sign for someone to know if they've had? Because, well, let's say someone had an abduction, right? And they come back and they say, "Oh, it was a wonderful abduction," but it was the same alien that you speak of that are committing these horrible crimes against humanity. And maybe they might think twice about that experience.
Yeah, and I think, again, just look at any alien as someone breaking into your house. Okay, it doesn't matter if the person breaking into your house is African American, Caucasian, Asian, African. It doesn't matter. They're in your house without your permission, uninvited. Yeah. So it just really doesn't matter. However, if you're really interested in races,
yes,
as everyone is, but it doesn't really matter, because any alien that's here is not here with our permission. They're violating our sovereignty. But Rachel goes into detail about a couple of different alien races in the documentary, which is coming out next week, next Saturday.
Okay. And where's the premiere?
The premiere, there's going to be a watch party on our Facebook page, Alien Resistance Group on Facebook.
So is that why you're not telling us what the race is? Because you want it to be part of the premiere?
I'm trying to hold something back here, Alan. Something.
All right, we'll let it go this time, Mark. But I guess next time you come back, if you do, then the cat will be out of the box.
Yeah, exactly.
As it were.
Exactly. But again, it just doesn't matter. Any alien on the planet here has no right to be here.
Let me ask you this then: is it an alien species that we're familiar with?
Yeah, it's grays.
Okay.
Right? You can see it in the preview. She has a drawing of these grays as she laid down on an operating table, just like I think the last guest described, or Ronald described.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, because that was the gray alien that I used in the banner for tonight's show. So I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to redo it. No. Have you heard about reptilians? Because in my experience, actually, let me preface that. Leading up to more recent years, it used to be reports of negative experiences being associated with reptilians. And grays were considered the more neutral or, benevolent.
Right.
Is that shifting, and why?
Rachel's testimony agrees with your general description, and she explains why.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there? What's the motivation, or why are we seeing more negative in grays?
Apparently, it's just a part of the makeup of these different species, or it's their culture. The reptilians seem to have a culture of aggression and domination, very hierarchical society or culture, at least. The grays seem to be, just from my own personal guess, they seem to be some sort of a worker bee race, and they seem to be seem to have been bred just to, do these tasks here on Earth. So I don't know if they're necessarily truly the power that's conducting these abductions. They're just like hired help.
Okay. Now, if that's true, then there is a puppeteer.
Right.
And so do you have any inclination who they are?
I don't, because it really just doesn't serve us. I mean, it's not like we're going to go and knock on these puppeteers' doors and, arrest them or anything.
Well, because you'd have to find them.
Exactly. And we can't get there anyway. So that's why we need to resist the invasion right now.
Now, what about reports that aliens aren't actually aliens, but they live underground and they've been here for quite some time?
Well, the Allies of Humanity do say that there are alien strongholds here on the Earth, bases, if you will. And these aliens use these bases to mentally project their presence here and to normalize their presence here on Earth, so that we become more comfortable with this subtle invasion. So under mountains, under the oceans, I do strongly believe that those exist.
We have a really good question from Angel Street. Grays, are they biological AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of speculation there as to exactly what they are. My feeling is that they are physical entities without souls. That's my guess. Strictly my opinion.
Right. And so all of your opinions or, inconclusive conclusions, as it were, working hypothesis of who these things are.
Right.
That information is all from eyewitness accounts?
It's from eyewitness accounts. It's from other abductees. It's from my own experience. Yeah. So my feeling is that these are beings that are like very intelligent animals, but without souls.
Oh, well, that's funny because someone just commented some grays are like tulpas, soulless, right? And so maybe that explains what you were saying before. They're
more neutral.
The more neutral approach and the insensitivity to. Right. Now, that requires you to believe in a soul, and then what is the soul? Right. So what would you describe that soul to be?
The soul is it's our everlasting identity that travels from lifetime to lifetime, and it never dies.
It never does. And that gives us the sense of right and wrong, morality.
That's sort of the living entity within us. That's our everlasting life. Our sense of right and wrong comes from a connection to the divine.
But then isn't inherent in the universe itself, if it's a divine creation or manifestation, that even these beings, if they evolved,
right,
and are not, let's say, a robot,
right,
that they would have
yes,
an understanding of this.
Well, they may not. Look, just like I said, everyone may not believe that they're wearing clothes, even though they are. You can have this divine intelligence within you and simply deny it, saying, okay. And a lot of these alien races, they are bred without the encouragement of knowledge of their soul. Their culture does not encourage to think for themselves, to consider right for wrong, to have ethics. They generally live in very regimental and controlled China-like cultures where they're told exactly what to do, and there's no religion, there's no spirituality, there's no encouragement to consider that we have an eternal soul.
So perhaps a good analogy might be if bees or ants were to evolve, but the core of their nature is to work, to do, and they don't develop, the part of the mind that has emotion, let's say, and they become very intelligent. Could it be something along those lines? Although I will say this, I saw a video once of this woman in England that had found this injured bee, or a bee without wings, I can't remember. And it seemed to show some affection in its very short life to her. It was really quite moving, which again just brings me back to, even if that were the case, even if some insect-like being were to evolve, that it just seems like there's something in nature. Birds can relate to us. They can bob their head to music. There just seems like, and maybe you're right. Maybe is that Earth only, or
no? Well, there's a difference between, say, birds and dogs and cats and us. So we, as sentient beings, are aware of our eventual death and demise. Dogs, cats, birds are not aware of their death until the moment before it comes. So there's clearly a difference between sentient beings and non-sentient beings. I'd like to say something about the hybridization program. And, there's a question that always comes up. It's like, well, why, if these aliens are so technologically sophisticated, why don't they just create human being hybrids on their own, on a spaceship? Why do they have to come to Earth? Why do they have to do this? So it's a very good question. And to me, from what I've heard over the years, is that they did try to do this. The aliens tried to create their own humanoids to then, live here on Earth. But apparently these beings were born without a soul. And so they quickly perished, or they committed suicide. And without a soul, you're not really a human being. And these beings, they can't integrate into our culture because we all have souls. We all have personalities. We're all unique individuals.
But
so
then
that's why they're using these women to impregnate them with the alien fetus, so that the soul will come into the fetus during that period.
So these hybrids are almost like the clones, let's say, in Star Wars, except those clones, I guess, have souls, but they're fated. And so it seems to me that there is still some room for free will, even if they're programmed to some degree, because now they do have souls, according to this theory.
Right. And we all have free will, but then the question is, of course, why don't we do good all the time, right?
And why doesn't the hybrid break free and do its own thing?
Exactly. Why don't they? It's because there's a control mechanism there. And the control mechanism is the same as the control mechanism here. It's fear. Fear-based control.
Fear-based control, a theme that we all know very well here on Earth.
Oh yeah.
But here's the problem, is that with fear, sometimes it's legit, and sometimes it's half legit, and sometimes it's completely fabricated.
Absolutely.
And how do we know?
Exactly.
These crop circles that we see, are these the same aliens that we're talking about tonight?
I don't know. I don't know. The Allies do not talk about the crop circles.
Okay. And do they give us any other signs?
Do the Allies give us any other signs?
The aliens that are abducting, are they leaving any signs behind for us?
I can't think of any right now.
Okay. Now, when abductees are on these craft, is there a typical description of what that type of craft looks like?
No. Rachel does go into some detail, though, about the craft. She has drawings that are on the film as well. There's some of that there. But again, it's I don't know if it's so important.
All right, Mark, we're going to wrap it up here in just a couple minutes. You want to leave us with any thoughts before we close out the night? This
phenomena is not hopeless. We do have a soul. We do have a connection to the divine. This is our greatest strength. If our case was hopeless as a planet, the allies of humanity would not have come at great expense and great cost to give us their wisdom. These briefings are available for free online, like I said, alliesofhumanity.org.
And so you trust these allies, these other aliens, and
Yes.
okay. All right. Well, that's it, Mark. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
And is there a future we'll get to see you one day?
Maybe.
Maybe. All
Maybe at
right.
the planetarium in New York.
Very good. Right. Okay. Have a good night, Mark. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thanks, Ron, Lib, and Jim, for your questions and comments. I really appreciate it. And of course, join us next week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then, starting in the new year, now there may be one more show before then, but starting in the new year, January 10th, Paranormal Now will be 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays. So change up once again, but we should be solid in this slot. And I appreciate all of you joining in the comment sections on YouTube and on kgradb.com. I appreciate the support and your wisdom, and it just makes this show so much more fun and exciting to do every week. So, I'm sorry that we're shifting again, but hopefully, I'll get to see all y'all on Sundays as well. And of course, you can always get the replays on kgradb.com website in the new archives section as well. All right. Thank you all for joining us on Paranormal Now. Until next time, I wish you all the best. Have a wonderful, happy holiday season. And of course, live in the mystery.